con todos, mi nombre es Jorge Varela con Up Fitness. Chequea nuestro podcast, adelanta 15 minutos para aprender exactamente cómo convertirte en un entrenador personal calificado, sabiendo todas las bases de progresión, programación, para entender todos los conceptos de personal training. Te esperamos.
Howdy, everybody, and welcome back to the Up Fitness podcast. Today is episode 33. We have Mr. Jorge, and he is our instructor out of Ecuador. And we have a really cool story how we met. We're going to talk about that. And then in about 20 minutes, he's going to do a solid 15, 20 minutes of the podcast in ESPANOL, because we are launching our Up Fitness CPT in Spanish, and he is our main instructor for that side of the pyramid. So we're really excited to have you today. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
So how did we meet? 10 years ago, about, right?
Yeah, maybe more. It was 2000, at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, I believe. Yeah. It was a long course. Remember, it used to be like 8 months or something.
Mm-hmm. And I was teaching at NPTI in Dublin. And a really cool story with Jorge, because he had a great class. You worked at the Bay Club for a little bit, correct?
Yeah, a few years actually. I worked in San Francisco in the Bay Club.
We recently just partnered with Bay Club. So we are now over 200 partnerships with the Up Fitness CPT. We have our lifetime, which is 166, 39 at Equinox. And then we have 4 that we have solidified with Megan through Bay Club. And ironically, one of the first places I ever worked was Renaissance Club Sport in the Bay Area. And that has been bought by Bay Club. And so we have a student who's working there, and I want to make a trip up there. But you were in the city at Bay Club, right?
Yeah, I was in the city in San Francisco, Fifth Avenue, I think.
And I remember I went to your house one night after class, and we had some tequila, and we had a little celebration when you guys graduated, and you were one of my first classes, I believe, maybe the first or second one. And
probably, yeah.
And did you guys ever participate in training the special needs kids that we had?
We did, actually. We did every Thursday. I believe it was like for, I think, an hour or two.
Yeah,
we
great,
actually
man.
had we actually also participated in their, they had like a sports league or whatever. They were used to do a lot of sports, and we were there like referees and, helping each other or whatever. It was awesome. It was really awesome.
Special Olympics. I remember that. It was great. And then all of a sudden we lost contact, as a lot of students do. So if you're listening to this and you haven't given us a 5-star, we want to get to that 100 marker ASAP. But if you're a student who's gone through the program a long time ago, reach out, say hello. I want to know how you're doing. We reconnected at the Los Angeles seminar about a month ago, and we reached out to Jay. I sent him a message. He was one of the kids in your class, and he's overseas doing some boxing stuff. And it was just neat how we reconnected, because I saw that NPTI Ecuador. I'm like, what the hell? Like, you're working NPTI now? How cool is that? So I was teaching there, loved it, great opportunity. And then you bought into it, and now you have a couple locations, right? And where are your NPTIs?
So actually, that was one after a trip that I took here in Latin America. We actually, every time I, backpacking through different cities or whatever, I kind of check out different locations, gym locations, and actually get to talk to trainers and stuff, and get to see like what are we working with, what is the level of trainers here. And that's what occurred to me. It was like, I rather, San Francisco is so expensive and everything. So I decided to actually move here. And then I connected with NPTI and bringing the franchise from them. And then we open as well for Colombia and Panama. So we have 3 locations right now, working for usually in-person classes, and as well for online classes. So
NPTI is National Personal Training Institute. I think there are about 30 or 40 of them worldwide. 6 months on, they do a really good job of connecting with military. So if you are listening to this and you have a military background, GI Bill, Montgomery Bill, you can take the course, and you also get reimbursed. So that's a great opportunity to learn from qualified instructors, understand movement, and you get to go out there and start training and helping people. And, it's fascinating, because Jorge and I started chatting about, what was the life of a trainer like in Ecuador, and how can we, potentially expand our brand and get international. And we talked about the pay in Ecuador for like your basic CPT, and it's not that great for a lot of them. And so they go through your program, they're qualified, and they go out there. So where does the typical trainer go after they get their certification?
So basically, so let's start with the beginning, with a little bit of history. Here in Latin America, what I've seen so far in the countries that I've traveled to is that we have two types of professionals, let's say. So one that usually is a sports specialist, right, that goes through, you know, many years of college and university. And then you have the empirical trainers, which actually, you know, people that actually saw changes in their body based on their routines or whatever, and then they fall in love with it, or they didn't know what else to do, and then just jump into the fitness world. So that, I would say, is 90% of trainers here in Latin America are done that way. So so we have a huge link of people that we actually, you need to, you know, we can actually challenge. So that's when we decided to start opening our classes, right? And now the big thing is, like, when people just do a regular course, is like 8 hours, 16 hours or something like that, very basic. So they usually go to a gym, work in the floor. Basically, there's no sales, there's no participation basically with clientele or anything, just basically the same routines all over again every day for, you know, as many years as they actually worked in there. So it's I think the pandemic actually helped a lot in changing the mindset, not only from gyms, because they lost a lot of clients, but also from people who actually are looking for personal training, because it opened up the doors to see, like, oh, I can't go to a gym, so what should I do? I need to keep working out, so I'm gonna hire a trainer. And that's when everything started booming in that sense, because it speed up every process in terms of personal training. So now what we're trying to do is, like, the last thing we're trying to promote is like going through a gym, because usually the pay is very basic, you know, a little more than minimum wage. So imagine working 8-10 hours. We know how hard this job could be, you know, especially dealing with all sorts of people. So imagine working 8 hours, 10 hours. And then, for example, here in Ecuador is like the basic pay is $500, $600 a month, right? Where you can actually, where we actually teach them is like how to become qualified and great trainers, not only in terms of what they know about the materials, about the basic, elements of personal training, but as well how to sell their product and themselves. So instead of charging, getting paid $500 a month, they get actually paid $20, $30 an hour. So they're making, $2,000 a month instead of $500, and they have their, they create their own schedule. It's a win-win relationship. So a lot of people actually reach out to us because of that, because they actually have the knowledge to, immerse themselves in personal training, and just one by one, right? So
that's so great, because there's a huge opportunity, and we were talking about this the other day, where a gym like one of the big four, say like a Lifetime or Equinox, let's just say that in personal training revenue for a month, low end, $100,000, the gym's taking home 60 to 70% of that. It's not all profit, obviously, because you have to pay and rent and everything and overhead, but they're bringing home a good chunk of money. But that was fascinating to me to hear that gyms in South America, for the most part, they're more in Central America, are more based on just the gym, and they haven't even got into that market. And so they don't have the trainer out there prospecting, trying to get business. It's just like, here's $500 for the month. You are there. It's almost like an ambassador. So if I'm doing bench press and I see you in the purple shirt, I can go over and say, hey, is that a good exercise? You're like, yeah, it's a great exercise. And so I was talking to Arash from the prehab guys the other day, as we have our monthly and quarterly little check-ins to see how their business is doing, how our business is doing, and we bounce ideas off one another. And I was talking to him about that. And he's like, oh, that makes sense, because I was in Portugal and that's what I saw. And so you and I started talking, like, I'm a vision person. And I'm thinking like, oh shit, we got to open up a gym in Ecuador. We got to go to Colombia. And not only do you have the revenue source stream one coming from memberships, which is gonna be the most lucrative, but you could tap into a stream that hasn't even been tapped into before. So, some of the gyms there will charge $100 to $100 per month, which is pretty comparable to high-end gyms here. But it's like you're missing out on that entire market of someone needs to learn how to do the bench press, the horizontal push, the horizontal pull, squat, hinge, unilateral. So if you really are competent in that, you can charge rates, and it would be essentially discovering a market that hasn't really been implemented yet. So what the gyms could charge per session, I'm not quite sure. If you're saying you go to someone's house and you charge 20, 30 bucks, now if you're listening to this and you're in the States and you're thinking, that's not that much, it's relative. Like, so if you and I went out and got a beer right now, Jorge, how much would it cost?
If you got in the store, maybe $1, I don't know, 80 cents. It could be really, really cheap, you know. A whole meal, for example, like lunch, you know, soup, second plate, natural juice is like $3.50 or $4. So talking about, like, a lot of people actually here in Latin America make $20 a day of work. You know, if you work in construction, you make $25, $30 a day for you know, 8 hours work. So when you're talking about like making as a trainer $25, $30 an hour, it's insane. It's a great pay for you know, for a job that is not, you don't have to go to school for 5 to 6 years, you know, so it's great.
And so if, as Jorge goes over this in Spanish later on for the Spanish speaking listeners, and I'll do a little bit, un poquito, because Cristobal habla español muy bueno. And
good, there you go.
It's important to look at how you want to set that standard. And trainers today, they're on their phone, they're not engaged, they're showing off flashy exercises. I saw a guy today at the gym working with his client, and they were doing a cool stability exercise. Definitely not appropriate for the client who was out of shape. And you see that and you just kind of wonder, like, I wonder why they chose that for their program. And too many trainers today just choose exercises and they will program the program, where a great trainer understands movement. They take the core movement patterns, implement the exercise variation that's appropriate and safe for the client, and we can overload and progress so they can get the results safely. But you don't train the program, you train the client. So like today, I have my CC on the board over here and have a client who came in, and at the end, we were going to do squats. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you want to do trap bar deadlift or do you want to do squats? And he's like, yeah, I'm feeling kind of like some deadlifts. So I modified that because I want him to enjoy the program. We're not doing a bunch of flashy stuff, but you need to train the person. And so it's really fascinating to me to hear that market, and it's new. And so we have an opportunity to really set the standard. Okay, so trainers are really educated. They understand anatomy and programming, all things that we're going to be teaching with the show Up Fitness CPT in Espanol, where you're going to get to learn from Jorge. Okay, so maybe you learn from over here, maybe you learn from over here. Let's give you a different way of thinking. But on top of that, let's double down on anatomy. Let's be able to communicate with physios and athletic trainers and be at that elite level. So when you are out there, you can talk to any medical professional, you look the part, you talk the part, and you set the standard that is unheard of, because in the States, the standard for trainers is really low with the industry standards. And unfortunately, we're just flashy and we show off our TNA, and it's just all about looks. And so I'm really excited to see what we can potentially do in the Central American markets. And so we're going to kind of transition now into Jorge talking more in Espanol, and he's going to go through a program and what that's going to look like. So again, my brother speaks Spanish. He's a ESL, and I speak with a lot of people who speak Spanish very, very, very well. And it's such an art to hear you speak, because you can speak great English, and then when you flip on over to Spanish, it's really neat to see how your true colors come out and you're really passionate about it. So I'm always excited to watch you. So let's hear what it's like to become a trainer and show Up Fitness with our class that's going to be starting up the 16th of October.
Well, thank you, Chris. Ok, para toda esa gente de Latinoamérica, bienvenidos. Este es el podcast de Show Up Fitness, esta vez en español. Y los que les venimos a hablar un poquito es acerca de qué es lo que queremos lograr, qué es lo que queremos hacer con todas estas certificaciones, qué es lo que queremos buscar, ¿sí? Y tratar de cambiar esos estándares dentro del mundo fitness en Latinoamérica, ¿no? Entonces, lo primero sería entender que hay dos tipos de profesionales allá afuera, ¿no? Que hay unos que son deportólogos, gente que ha ido por mucho tiempo a la universidad, y tenemos la gente que ha aprendido este tipo de cosas, el mundo fitness en general, por medio empírico, ¿no es cierto? Donde ha tenido experiencia con su propio cuerpo, ha manejado las diferentes variables, ha funcionado generalmente para ellos, y eso lo quieren replicar, lo han hecho su pasión, pero de pronto no tienen los mecanismos, no tienen las variables cambiantes, ¿no es cierto?, para poder hacer todo este tipo de cosas. Entonces, lo más importante, ¿no?, es lo que nosotros queremos lograr justamente con todas las certificaciones que le estamos ofreciendo, tanto de Shop Fitness, MPTI, todo esto, es justamente aprender la ciencia detrás del ejercicio, del entrenamiento, las variables, los patrones de movimiento, la anatomía, kinesiología, biomecánica, cómo se mueve el cuerpo, cómo interactuar con un cliente, cómo ganar clientes. Si ustedes tienen una pregunta de cómo vender ese paquete para ustedes poder hacer un poco más de dinero, ¿sí? No es necesario, y es lo que una de las partes que les vengo a decir, no es necesario quedarnos detrás en un gimnasio. Realmente podemos crear nuestra nueva línea de entrenamiento, ¿sí? Sea grupal, sea individual, sea tanto en entrenamiento HIIT, funcional, de resistencia, maratones, bicicleta, lo que sea. Los principios básicos del entrenamiento son los mismos. Entonces, nuestra recomendación es que ustedes sigan este tipo de certificaciones donde realmente van a aprender todos estos conceptos, ¿sí? Y poderlos aplicar a la parte práctica. Porque una vez saben esto, ustedes, su valor agregado como entrenador va a subir muchísimo. Entonces, desde eso depende cuánto ustedes van a poder cobrar por hora. ¿Sí? Ya no estaríamos cobrando un sueldo, vamos a cobrar por hora, donde nosotros podemos organizar nuestro propio horario, donde podemos manejarnos. Si tenemos hijos y queremos trabajar, va a poder acercarse. Si tenemos otro negocio, otro trabajo, nosotros tranquilamente vamos a poder manejar esos espacios y seguir ganando un buen dinero aquí en Latinoamérica, ¿no? Entonces, un poquito acerca de la certificación, vamos a empezar en octubre 16. ¿Sí? Octubre 16. Si ustedes quieren saber más, contáctense con Chris, Show Up Fitness, tenemos tanto el website, vamos a tener, y para los que no saben qué es Show Up Fitness, somos básicamente una empresa que tiene varias partes, ¿no? Desde que nosotros les ayudamos a pasar pruebas como las de NASM, ACE, ACSM, ¿no es cierto? Donde nosotros les ayudamos justamente cómo pasar esas pruebas, ¿sí? Desde ahí es donde salía la conexión justamente con Chris, donde yo estaba ayudando justamente a pasar gente, a pasar las pruebas de NASM. NASM, how many people do you have already passed the NASM exam with you? 3,000, más de 3,000.
4,000. 4,000?
4,000. 4,000. Yeah, that's
sí.
great. Yeah. Entonces, imagínense, nosotros ya, Chris, lógicamente, con su experiencia, ha ayudado a más de 4,000 personas a pasar estos exámenes de NASM, ACE, ACSM, ¿no es cierto? Entonces, para que ustedes sepan el tipo de personas con las que van a estar trabajando, con las que van a estar aprendiendo, y hemos ayudado a pasar, ahorita recién abrieron NASM, la parte de español, y hemos ayudado a muchísimas personas a pasar esa prueba. Pero nosotros no creemos en ser un entrenador certificado. No nos sirve de nada tener un papel con nuestro nombre si nosotros no sabemos aplicar, ¿sí?, estos conceptos al mundo real, al gimnasio. Cuando vamos y tenemos una entrevista en Equinox y nos preguntan cómo crear una rutina en 10 minutos, cuando alguien tiene un problema de rodilla, cuando alguien tiene un problema de lumbares, cervicales, en fin, todo esto tenemos que aprenderlo, ¿no es cierto?, para poderlo aplicar con nuestros clientes. Justamente lo que nosotros vamos a crear en este curso. Entonces, para que sepan, octubre 16 empezamos, es un curso en línea, cualquier persona en Latinoamérica se puede unir. Nos encantaría poder ver un montón de caras, hacernos preguntas acerca de cualquier cosa. Después de eso vamos a tener la parte de nutrición, fisioterapia, cómo recuperar lesiones, todo este tipo de cosas que va a ser información después del curso. Entonces ustedes no se van a sentir como que todo se terminó después de esto, ¿no? Que realmente van a tener la oportunidad de seguir con ese aprendizaje y volverse cada vez mejores entrenadores y poder cobrar un poco más, ¿sí? Hacer lo que nos gusta, ayudar a la gente y aparte ganar un poco más de dinero. ¿Sí? Entonces, justamente el día de hoy les vengo a hablar un poquito acerca de los ejemplos de cómo hacemos el core accessory o los patrones de movimiento con accesorios. Entonces, esta es la manera que con Chris hemos visto que es la manera más fácil para entrenadores que están iniciando cómo programar, ¿sí?, un entrenamiento de una manera fácil. Recuerden, los principios básicos van a ser los patrones de movimiento, entender lo que es una sentadilla, un salto, un unilateral, el peso muerto, el empuje de cadera, ¿no es cierto? Un empuje horizontal, empuje vertical, jalón vertical, jalón horizontal, todo ese tipo de cosas donde nosotros podemos crear un programa, ¿sí? Entonces, basados en eso, vamos a tenerles un caso que es una mujer, ¿sí?, de 35 años, sin ningún problema, lógicamente estamos dándolo desde una manera genérica, sin ningún problema, pero quiere perder peso, quiere delinear la forma de la cintura y quiere, lógicamente, ganar esos buenos glúteos, esas buenas nalgas, ganar un poco de volumen, justamente para poder verse más chica, de todas maneras. Entonces, aquí les traemos una rutina. Se va a basar en 3 sets, 3 compound sets, ¿no es cierto?, donde vamos a tener sets de 3 ejercicios. Las repeticiones vamos a ir de 8 a 12, lógicamente buscando un peso que sea por lo menos un 85% de un Warrior Max. Si no saben qué es eso, únanse al curso, ahí van a saber exactamente a qué se refiere, pero básicamente tiene que ser un peso que sea demandante para esa persona. Demandante. Si es muy suave, realmente no vamos a ver los resultados adecuados. Recuerden, nuestra prioridad es potencializar ese entrenamiento con esa persona. ¿Sí? Entonces empezaríamos con unas sentadillas. Lógicamente, si ya llevamos un historial, podemos hacer unas sentadillas con barbell, ¿no es cierto?, donde podemos justamente buscar el rango de movimiento perfecto para poder llegar a lo más bajo. Vamos a trabajar en un set de 8 a 12 repeticiones, que es uno de los patrones de movimiento. Recuerden, sentadillas. Y vamos a ir con un segundo patrón de movimiento, que es un peso muerto. Nuevamente, con un peso demandante para esa persona. Y tercero, como accesorio, vamos a tener los gusanos. Si nunca han hecho los gusanos, es un ejercicio bastante demandante, bastante... necesitamos un montón de calorías para poder hacer, porque muchos músculos se mueven al mismo tiempo. Entonces, es cuando ustedes están parados con las piernas rectas y bajan completamente rectos hacia el suelo, caminan hacia adelante, generalmente hacemos una flexión de pecho abajo y regresamos hasta poder elevarnos completamente, ¿sí? Entonces, una versión básicamente de un burpee un poco más sencilla, pero que nos va a ayudar a que nuestro consumo de calorías sea alto. Recuerde, por eso siempre vamos a querer los patrones de movimiento, porque nos vamos a basar en músculos grandes que van a necesitar consumir más calorías para poder producir ese entrenamiento. Segundo set. Tenemos unos step-ups, o justamente cuando estamos subiendo a la grada, los vamos a hacer de costado, ¿sí? O sea, en vez de tener el cajón enfrente nuestro, vamos a tener el cajón a un lado, por ejemplo, en el lado derecho, y vamos a hacer los step-ups, siempre asegurándonos de que la pierna de abajo no sea la que empuje, sino que toda la fuerza venga desde la pierna que está sobre el cajón, ¿sí? Este es un excelente ejercicio justamente para poder potencializar glúteos. De ahí tenemos unas flexiones de pecho para dejar de descansar un poquito las piernas. Vamos a flexiones de pecho. Recuerden, los pectorales, ¿sí?, son músculos bastante grandes que también necesitan mucho en cuanto a las calorías. Y este es un empuje horizontal. Perfecto. Y de ahí tenemos justamente unos patinadores, ¿sí?, que son los famosos pequeños saltos en los costados. Básicamente, imagínense como si estuvieran patinando, ¿sí?, en hielo, básicamente, y nosotros estamos saltando de lado a lado, cruzando las piernas, donde vamos a estar trabajando esa coordinación, balance, equilibrio y, lógicamente, ese rango de movimiento y trabajar todo completamente. Y finalmente, el tercer set, tenemos una sentadilla sumo. Si recuerden, las sumo son con las piernas abiertas, justamente para poder atacar a ese glúteo máximo, ¿no es cierto? Es excelente ejercicio porque nos va a dar un rango de movimiento mucho más amplio. De ahí tenemos unos remos para ser el antagonista de las flexiones, ¿no es cierto? Vamos a hacer unos remos que lo podemos hacer en máquinas o con mancuernas. Y finalmente tenemos un limpia parabrisas, que esto será un pequeño juego, no sé si ustedes lo han hecho alguna vez. Es un ejercicio de abdominales, para core, donde la persona está acostada, sube las piernas, ¿no es cierto?, y los mueve de lado a lado. Entonces, como entrenador, justamente para crear esa conexión con mi cliente, voy a tener mis manos en diferentes puntos para que esa persona no sepa exactamente a dónde tiene que ir, simplemente fijarse y generar esa coordinación y esa interacción entre cliente y entrenador. ¿Sí? Entonces, esto sería una rutina justamente que nos daría alrededor de 50 minutos, lógicamente haciendo un poco de calentamiento, un poco de estiramiento que sea correcto, adecuado para este tipo de cosas, pero tratando de potencializar el tiempo que estamos haciendo eso. ¿Sí? Entonces, eso sería un ejemplo para que ustedes sepan lo que van a aprender en alguno de estos cursos, hacerlo súper fácil, hacerlo de manera eficiente y potencializar el tiempo de sus clientes y el suyo. ¿Por qué no? Porque ustedes recuerden, ustedes son el primer producto dentro del entrenamiento personalizado. Así que, ¿por qué no mejorar cada día? ¿Sí? Entonces, recuerden, octubre 16 empezamos el curso, ¿sí? Con Up Fitness. Los horarios los podrán encontrar en nuestra página. Si tienen alguna pregunta, esperamos tenerlos a todos por allá. Y lógicamente, contáctense con nosotros. Cualquier cosa, estamos a las órdenes.
All I heard was grande culo.
Exactly. Yeah. Big booty. Yeah.
This is great, man. I appreciate you and looking forward to seeing you again in person. So let's get this first one out there. If you're listening to this and it's one of your first times, we appreciate the support. Hop in there, give us a 5-star rating. Make sure to follow Jorge on TikTok. What is your handle, bud, where they can find you?
Is Jorge R Fitness Guru or Jorge R Fitness Guru. Instagram, TikTok, and everything.
And he's working on his YouTube. He's going to become a YouTuber, an international sensation. We got to get in front of more trainers. If you are struggling with programming, with anatomy, confidence, getting clients, it's the business, it's people skills, it's the trade skills. These are things that we're highlighting as we progress forward and we continue to spread our brand internationally. We're really excited to help more of you get out of your comfort zones, but most importantly, create a sustainable career. Too many people get into this and they're either misled thinking that you need a certification through a textbook. And then what happens is you end up quitting, and we want to change that, and we are changing that. So I'm glad we've been able to link back up and excited to get into new places. So make sure to comment, reach out to us. What are things you want to hear more of? This is free information for you. So reach out to us. We will give you a podcast specific for yourself. Look at the last one. There was someone who asked about how to train someone who's 300 pounds. We did a podcast on it. Comment, let us know. We want to help you. Have a great day. Keep showing up.